When I was little, my father was famous. He was the greatest samurai in the empire.
Hey everybody. Now, first off, I want to put some of you at ease that this video isn't going to be a diatribe against Trump, even though he will be mentioned. No, this video is to address a number of criticisms I've received when I claimed that Trump was trying to downplay the numbers. Critics claim that there aren't any numbers to downplay, they're just that small. That this virus is just like the cold or the flu, and thousands die from the flu every year, and no one is claiming those numbers are being downplayed. They are saying that given how few people have died compared to the general population, you are more likely to die in a car accident than from contracting COVID-19. And because of this fact, I wasn't using the same scientific criteria toward this as I have shown toward other science topics. So I'm going to briefly talk about the numbers and why being truthful about them is important, and why talking about this outbreak in a casual manner is problematic in itself. When people compare this outbreak of COVID-19 to the common cold or the seasonal flu, they're encouraging people to act in the same casual way they do about those diseases, and that can make things much worse with COVID-19. There are various estimates of how many Americans, and I'm going to talk about American numbers here, how many Americans will be affected by COVID-19. A Harvard statistical model estimated 20 to 60% of adults, and Dr. Brian Monahan, the attending physician of the U.S. Congress, advised that from 70 to 150 million could be infected, and that's 25 to 55%. For this discussion, I'm going to start with 70 million people contracting COVID-19. How's that going to affect things? Let's not talk about deaths yet, because this isn't only about deaths. And when people only focus on deaths, they're creating a false standard, in my opinion. There's a number that's been thrown around rather casually, that 80% of the people infected have mild effects. This has led to some to make statements like, if you contract COVID-19, please understand that 80% of you will have mild symptoms. This is highly misleading, and it's a downplay of the potential effects, because mild in this case means anything from not really feeling sick to full-blown pneumonia. Some 40% can develop some form of pneumonia. Mild is everything short of needing to be hospitalized and given oxygen or put on a ventilator. That leaves some 15 to 20% of people needing oxygen or ventilators. That's 10 to 14 million people in this scenario. That's in addition to those already in the health system. Now, if you dismiss COVID-19 as it's just a common cold or flu, then people will act in the same casual manner they do about those things. Many of us are immune to many of the cold and flu virus strains out there, and people get vaccinated. So there's a level of herd immunity in the populace that tempers the rate of the spread of colds and flus. We don't have that for COVID-19. So taking a casual approach to COVID-19 can cause that 10 to 14 million hospitalizations to happen over a very short period of time and be an even greater number by spreading it very quickly, while a focused approach can drag it out over a period of a year or more and even decrease that number if it gives time for a vaccine to be developed. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen this graphic here. This is visualizing the effect on our healthcare system if this is allowed to spread quickly versus slowing it over time. This line here represents the capacity of our system, the maximum number of people that can be treated at any one time. If those 14 million or more people hit the system very quickly, the system can't handle it. And people get a lower level of care than they would normally get, and potentially a greater number of people will die from this infection than the estimated rate. Not only that, but people who would normally get a high level of care for other illnesses or injuries or any non-COVID-19 patient that would normally be in the healthcare system may potentially get a lower level of care and a higher rate of mortality because the system is overwhelmed. But if it's taken very seriously and people take relatively extreme measures to slow the spread of the virus, this changes. You've probably heard the phrase, flatten the curve. This is that curve. This is flattening it out. This is the same number of cases hitting the healthcare system, but since it's spread out over such a long period of time, the numbers at any given moment are within the system's capacity and people get a high level of care, and we have the potential for fewer deaths than the estimated mortality rate. Now let's talk about that mortality rate. Estimates from known cases range anywhere from 2.3 to 3.4%, but that's expected to go down when widespread testing begins to maybe 1% or even a bit less. The mortality rate of the seasonal flu is about 0.1%. If that turns out to be the case for COVID-19, we're looking at 70,000 deaths. The average numbers of deaths per year from the flu is 38,000 over the last 9 years. Deaths from car accidents, 40,000 per year. Now, to some, 70,000 deaths doesn't warrant a critical response. But let me remind you that we're talking about 70,000 deaths over a short period of time or a long period of time, depending on how we deal with the spread. And the 70,000 is if the mortality rate is the same as the flu. Current estimates are a minimum of 10 times that of the flu. So that 70,000 would be 700,000. Now, in the end, these numbers could not seem very severe. 70,000 deaths over a period of 18 months, and by then a vaccine has been developed to keep it under control, would be a great scenario. And people aren't being asked to do much in order to keep this under control. Wash your hands often and thoroughly for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face unnecessarily. Avoid large gatherings of people. Exercise social distancing. Find other ways of greeting people other than handshakes and hugs, and follow the recommended guidelines for getting tested and self-isolation if needed. If we handle it right, it will seem like we overreacted, and COVID-19 will become manageable, just like the seasonal flu. And in the end, we want it to seem like we overreacted. At the end of this year, I want to have science deniers. And if you're denying the determinations of the CDC and the WHO and the experts worldwide about this, you're a science denier. I want science deniers coming at me saying, only 40,000 people died from your deadly virus, Lesser Sapien. We told you it was a hoax. That would be great. And if that happens, I know we all did our job. Now, right there is where I ended my video on my other GreaterSapien channel. A number of my subscribers over there have a hard time dealing with criticisms of Trump. So I didn't point out that one dangerous way Trump has downplayed the potential of this outbreak was by calling it a hoax made up by Democrats and the liberal media. Saying it's a hoax and downplaying the estimated mortality rate on a hunch is telling people that they don't need to change a thing about what they're doing, and it puts them at risk. And when you then turn around and make a task force about it and call for a national emergency for what you said was a hoax, you've undercut any credibility you had with the American people. Now, Trump had no credibility with me, but he obviously had some with his base, who believed him when he said it was a hoax. What are they to believe when he changed up on them? Some of them, if they have any intellect of their own, will question what the truth is, who they should trust for good information, and that puts them at risk. Others, sadly, are part of Trump's cult of personality and believed it was a hoax, and now they believe it's real and he's handling it. Or it's still a hoax and he's just forced to play along to keep things together. And they'll be the ones that claim that they knew it was a hoax all along if we manage this outbreak properly. By the way, I wouldn't put past Trump to go back to saying it was a hoax, especially if he loses the election. One last way he dangerously downplayed this was his belligerent about getting himself tested. He fit all the criteria for someone who should get tested, and he had definitely been in contact with someone who had tested positive. When confronted about not being tested after this contact, he said people tell him he was with the guy, but he doesn't remember. Like it matters. Your people told you you were with him. Believe your people. And when asked why he wouldn't get tested, he said, I never said I wouldn't get tested. And then when asked directly if he would get tested, he said, I probably will, but not for that reason. Fuck, dude. That's exactly the reason you should get tested. The experts standing right behind you just explained to all of us how that is the reason, and you don't like being forced into a corner, so you're going to get tested, but not for that reason? Fuck, man. Set a damn example for people. If people act like you did on this, they're putting the other people around them at risk. Lead, motherfucker. Lead.
That's my job. That's what I do. I don't lose. I win. Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Maybe you came by to congratulate me on last night's victory.